Okay, we'll talk now about some suggestions about how to take the exam. First, please read the instructions in the syllabus. They've been written based on a long time in teaching, so I can predict what mistakes you're likely to make. So really take those to heart. There are instructions on the exam itself, and it's sort of stunning to me that people don't read them, but please do read them. Bring one large blue book, bring a Scantron. On the blue book, write your name on the inside back cover only. That is so that there is anonymity in the grading process. Write on every line of the page, but write on only one side of the page. Use a color of ink that will not annoy me. The colors that don't annoy me, and I'm not kidding, imagine if you had to read a whole paper of pink ink. The colors that do not annoy me are blue and black, except for that really peacock blue, that annoys me too. Okay, so you are using a non-erasable ink pen for the blue book in blue or black ink. If you make a mistake, cross it out. You don't have to obliterate it from the paper, making a hole in the page. I think people are afraid that if they make a mistake and they cross it out, I'll read it anyway and I'll think they're dumb. No. I have to read tons of exams. If you tell me there's a paragraph I don't have to read, fine. What if you meant to put something in there but you forgot? For example, you forgot to define a term. Don't try. If that happens, just write it on the facing page and put an arrow where you'd like it to be inserted. And again, all of this is in the instruction. Don't start with your conclusion, start with the problem. Tell me what rules you're using. Explain them. On the multiple choice, you're using a Scantron. And please buy these beforehand and bring them to class. The university does not provide these. For the Scantrons, you'll need a pencil, of course, and of course write your name on the Scantron. Anything that anyone has ever told you about a multiple choice exam is true, meaning your first answer, unless you read the question wrong, is about as right as you're going to get. I've seen more people erase the right answer to put in the wrong answer than the reverse. Don't have any stray marks. If you erase your answer, really erase it, and I'll tell you why. These Scantrons go through a machine. The machine is looking for a mark in any place where it has been told not to expect a mark. So if you don't erase it, or if you have a really fat or stray mark, the machine is reading it and saying, oh, that's wrong. Okay, so you don't want to have any marks in any place where you don't want them. When I used to take exams, I would put a little pencil notch next to each question where if I had time, I would want to look at it again. I wouldn't do that if I were taking an exam today. If you want to mark something up, mark on the exam itself. When you finish taking the exam, put the Scantron and the exam itself back in the blue book and hand me the whole thing as a package. There may or may not be some short answer questions, and if there are, follow the instructions. If it says to write your answer on the exam itself, do that. If it says to write it in the blue book, do that. Short answer questions are not essay questions, so sometimes they don't even take a full sentence. They're just asking you a question. All right, so we've mentioned some advice from Dr. Cooper beforehand, but here they are. Answer the question. If the question is Joe versus Mary, answer it. Don't answer Joe versus the mechanic. Look at what the question's asking. Sometimes I've had people say, but if I analyze it, do I have to reach a conclusion? Yes, you do. Is there only one right answer? No, there might be more than one right answer. We've talked about this in class. If a reasonable person could have reached either result, then there's no single right answer. The A paper is the one who saw and articulated both sides of an issue and reached a conclusion based on analysis of which one they thought was the stronger case. Don't change the facts. We've seen examples of this. Don't ignore the facts and don't repeat the facts. I've had students say, what do you mean by repeating the facts? Repeating the facts is what it sounds like. There's no point to it. I wrote the facts. I know what they say. I had a professor in law school who said, reading exams is like reading a bad novel 100 times. And the worst part is I wrote the plot. So don't simply repeat the facts. Do tell me their significance. Is it significant that the car was traveling at 100 miles per hour in a 40 mile per hour zone? Of course. Tell me why. Is it significant that the car was blue? If not, then don't repeat it. People waste a lot of time basically rewriting the question into their answer and then complain they didn't have enough time. Remember that what I'm looking for is reading comprehension, problem solving, and logic. You're being rewarded for identifying issues, using relevant laws, debating their application to the facts. Let's say you get a question on negligence and it looks like there's a problem with whether the defendant's conduct actually caused the injury. Let's say that this is where you think the issue is. Should you tell me all the other rules about negligence? Well, yes. Remember, I want to know that you know. But if it's not an issue, don't spend a bunch of time on it. Instead, tell me in one sentence that negligence is a tort that, just go through the rule. But don't spend a lot of time on it. Is there only one right answer? Well, we've addressed that. Sometimes the answer is yes. If your question is, does a motorist owe a duty to fellow motorists while driving, and you conclude the answer is no, then I would say that you're simply wrong. Other parties are relying on other motorists to drive safely, so that's clearly wrong. However, when there is an issue about something that is a true question, there's sometimes not one right answer. The right answer is the one that sees both sides of the issue. Should you IRAC? Well, the answer to this ideally is you should have learned enough how to spot an issue, articulate the rule, apply it, and reach a conclusion to incorporate this into an essay answer. Should you rigidly break it out into paragraphs, issue, rule, application, conclusion, the way you do for briefs you bring to class? It's acceptable to do so. However, I've noticed from over the years that the students who get higher grades tend to incorporate IRAC into the essay the same way that the judges are in the cases that you're reading in the textbook. Again, we've talked about this in class. What if there's more than one issue? Well, go through each one separately. You're trying to be clear to the reader. So if there are, let's say, 2 issues that you've spotted, should you do issue 1, issue 2, rule 1, rule 2, and on? No. That's actually really complicated for the reader to follow what you're saying. So attack the first issue, articulate the first rule, analyze it, and reach a conclusion before you move on to the second issue. How many questions are on the exam? I never failed to get this as a question, and the answer is, I don't know, I haven't written it yet. And my question to you is, tell me how it will change how you study. It probably won't. I think when you're nervous about something, you're grasping for information, and this is completely understandable. However, it's not that helpful for you to grasp onto things that aren't going to matter. What does matter is that you allocate time on the exam based on their relative weight towards the exam. I will never forget when I took the bar exam that there was a 3-hour period and there were 3 essay questions. So you tell me, how would you allocate your time? There was a woman sitting across from me, and with 5 minutes left in the 3-hour period, she was breaking the seal and starting the 3rd question. And I remember at that point thinking, you failed. It doesn't matter how good your answers are to the first 2, you failed. How did you get this far in school and not know how to take an exam? So when you get the exam, look at it. If 40% of the grade is multiple choice, I'd look at the clock, figure out what 40% of the time is available, and write down the time. And at that point, I'd move on. Whether I felt I had enough time or not, I would budget my time based on the grade allocations. I've had people turn in exams where they simply never talked about one of the essays or felt, well, I marked up my exam itself, but I still didn't fill in the Scantron for the multiple choice. Can I have time to do it now? Well, no. Part of completing the exam is finishing it, so it's not fair to give anybody more time that we're not giving everyone. So the answer is no. Do I have to reach a conclusion? Yes, and I would distinguish this from an opinion. What some of you've done when you're writing briefs is to say, well, she shouldn't have driven that fast, or she should have been more careful. Okay, but you're not here to give advice to people on how this whole thing could have been prevented. You've now got a dispute on your lap. Solve it. Not everyone is going to be your happy, but that's your job. Solve it. Another question I get a lot is, are you grading us on our English? The answer is no. In other words, if there's grammatical errors, spelling errors, poor language, that will not affect your grade. However, it does affect your grade whether you're able to explain clearly what you mean. So to that degree, yes, it does. Your English does matter. So for those of you for whom English is a second language, I encourage you to go to the Learning Resource Center and to have them go over some of your briefs with you. They won't have an opinion about the law because they're Masters of English students, they're not law students, but they can definitely help you with your English. As mentioned before, short answers do not have to be in full sentences. Just give me an answer. For multiple choice, every once in a while there's more than one correct answer on the multiple choice, and if so, you must mark all correct answers. If you get a question like that, though, I'll put it in the question itself. I will say, mark all correct answers. If you don't see that in the question itself, then just mark the single best answer. If you think there are two that might be right, choose the better and leave it at that. And good luck!